Good evening. Thank you, Nan, so much. I want to thank Indivisible Harlem. I want to thank, and on behalf of my co-leader, my district leader, the woman that makes the Frederick Samuel Democratic Club go, Ms. Wilma Brown Phillips. I want to say thank you for letting us collaborate with you on this very, very important forum. You know, as someone who represented this community for 24 years in the New York State Assembly, someone who has run for office, someone who has lost sometimes, and someone who has won sometimes. Politics, in terms of this community, it can be served in a whole lot of different ways. And although I'm not running for anything, this is still my community. This is still a community in which I love, still a community in which I still serve in so many ways. So this forum for New York City Council in Harlem is probably, I would venture to say, the most important political forum that I have, that I can observe right through here right now. I think it's more important than the folks running for mayor. I think it's more important than those folks running for control. I think it's more important than those folks running for borough president. This is, you know, when you're running for city council, you are the most local. People have to see you, they have to feel you, they have to touch you. So I want to thank Indivisible Harlem for putting this all together. As I said, Wilma Brown Phillips at the Frederick Samuel Democratic Club and we've been trying to run our political organization for, oh God, it seems like forever, but it's not easy. So I know that Indivisible Harlem, it's not easy to do what you do as well. And I want to say thank you for bringing over 80 people so far, over 80 people. So candidates, you are being watched. And so that's why they're all dressed up at this point. But let me say this to the candidates, Nan, before I sign off. I want to thank the candidates for running. I want to thank them all for running. Running for office is not easy, and it should not be taken lightly. It's a total commitment at the expense of your families, your income, just everything. You have to be totally focused. So the folks that are actually running are to be congratulated, and we thank them. So with that, Nan, I want to say thank you, Josh. And I'm told I have to give it away to Ms. Camille Davis. Is she there? Camille Davis, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, County Leader Wright. And thank you, Ms. Wilma Brown, for partnering with us and the larger Frederick E. Samuel Community Democratic Club. Good evening to everyone, to our candidates. Thank you for showing up today. And as Mr. Wright said, thank you for running. My name is Camille Davis. I'm a founding member of Indivisible Harlem. IH, as we call it, came together as a response to the presidential election in 2016. Like all indivisibles across the country, our genesis story begins with an online publication of the Indivisible Guide, which was a how-to guide to the average citizen, tricks, tips, direction for those of us that wanted to lobby our federal representatives. However, as our group coalesced, we realized two really important things. Number one, some of the most important work we could do would be local and hyperlocal. And number two, we needed partners, longtime activists and community groups with a longer history than ours and expertise in areas that we cared about, such as affordable housing, healthcare, education, climate change, fair treatment of immigrants, and the list could really go on. With these partnerships and coalitions and members of our group tapping all of their talents, we've been able to do a lot of things like host forums like tonight's. We've done 2 previous forums. We've worked with groups to dismantle the IDC. If you're on this call and you don't know about the IDC, I encourage you to Google that. We helped usher in a Democratic majority in the state Senate. We've recently, our members have been instrumental in advocating for aggressive climate change legislation and instrumental in bringing a dramatic and historic change in the state budget process. And we look forward to seeing the results of their efforts as the year plays out. So speaking of partnerships, our partnership with the Frederick E. Samuel Community Democratic Club is what brings us here tonight. And working with them, we have this opportunity to make sure that candidates are heard during this very important race. I also have the pleasure of introducing our moderator, Dr. Rahsaan Harris, CEO at Citizens Committee of New York City, whose mission statement is to help New Yorkers, especially those in low-income areas, come together and improve the quality of life in their neighborhoods. So, Dr. Harris, as you can imagine, is quite accomplished. So as not to miss any key details, let me just say, he has more than 20 years of experience leading nonprofits in international grant making, partnering with communities to make local investments and promote community improvement. Most near and dear to us, he's been a leader in New York City as a school teacher, a member of various Harlem-based organizations, part of their boards. He's been a devoted mentor, a member of the Peace Corps, serving in South America as well. He received his doctorate in public and urban policy from the New School. He also holds a master's in management and high school science education from New York University and Columbia, respectively, and a Bachelor of Arts from Princeton University. So not only is he extremely accomplished, but I know him to be a man of integrity and heart, committed to his community. I've had the pleasure of being a parent with him with the PTA. I knew him when he was just Rahsaan to me. And lo and behold, when I went looking for a moderator for this evening, someone suggested this Dr. Harris, and I said, who is that? So it was my pleasure to know more about Dr. Harris and to have him be our moderator for this evening. And my next instruction is to turn it over to Nan, who will give us the rules of the road for this evening.
Camille, thank you. Thank you, Keith, Wilma Brown, and Dr. Harris. And of course, you know, a big welcome to the candidates running for City Council District 9. As Camille said, my name is Nan Fessler, and I'm both a member of Indivisible Harlem and the Frederick E. Samuel Community Democratic Club. The rules and format are really short. Candidates will have 2 minutes each to introduce themselves. Candidates will be asked questions in alphabetical order. All answers will be up to 2 minutes long. Dr. Harris will both be a moderator and a timekeeper. There will be no rebuttals or direct responses. And our chat will be monitored. And if there is some time at the very end, we might be able to answer or have Dr. Harris ask some of the questions that have shown up in the chat. And that's it. Again, welcome. I'm very excited to be doing this forum. And it's yours, Dr. Harris. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nan, Camille, and Indivisible Harlem. It's so humbling to be here. I'm hearing from County Leader Keith Wright and all the folks at Frederick Samuel's Democratic Club. Thank you, Wilma, and thank you for everything that everyone's doing to be civically engaged. As it was said earlier, Citizens Committee for New York City gives micro grants so people can do great work in the city. And it's all contingent on folks stepping up and doing their part. And some people say sometimes politics can be a blood sport, but we want to make sure that people come together to be able to improve communities. And what better way than, as a Harlem resident myself, to be able to have a conversation about what people's aspirations and dreams are for our community. So without further ado, again, I'm going to be the timekeeper, 2 minutes. If you'd like to address what might be said by someone else, do it within the context of the questions we're answering. We'd like it to be a conversation for folks to get to know you. Obviously, folks can go to your websites to learn specific deep policy, but I think the feel and the energy of your campaign is going to come through the way you talk about yourself. So the first question is, who are you and why you're running? And we're going in alphabetical order. And so that should be Miss Cordell Clear. You have to unmute.
Thank you so much, and I'm happy to be here. Fred Samuels and Indivisible Harlem, thank you for giving us this opportunity. My name is Cordell Clear, and I have worked in city and state government serving this district for almost 2 decades. I've worked with thousands of residents and numerous organizations and many elected officials and community leaders on a range of issues affecting our district and our city. Prior to working in government, when it wasn't so popular to live in Harlem due to poor living conditions in my building and in my apartment, my family became affected by lead poisoning. And I think this was my major introduction into advocacy and activism in the community. I fought along with and ultimately chaired a citywide coalition of healthcare professionals, childcare providers, unions, tenant leaders, you name it, and housing advocates to bring about change. And we brought, after 12 years, the strongest, most comprehensive lead poisoning prevention bill in the country in 2004. Though that did not change the outcome for my child, I am very proud to say that it changed the outcome for thousands of children since then. As a former school board member and CEC president, I fought to improve educational options for children in our district, to increase fairer enrollment opportunities and choice in the public school system. I've also served as a Democratic district leader for over a decade, and I've worked as a community organizer and advocate my entire adult life. And I can say this, listening to my neighbors and working with and for all of you over the years has prepared me for leadership in this district. It had to have been my best lesson. We're all in this together, and I just want to continue working for you.
Thank you, Cordell, for that introduction. Next, we have up Joshua Clennon.
Hi, good evening, Indivisible Harlem and Fred Sands Democratic Club. My name is Joshua Clennon. I'm a housing activist, small business owner, and community board leader. I'm running for New York City Council in District 9 to bring bold, transformative change to our village of Harlem. The challenges facing our community are not just talking points for me. They're my lived experiences of my father at a young age to gun violence. Seeing my neighbors, friends, and families unable to afford to live in a community that they fought so long and so hard to save led me to get involved in community activism and affordable housing. For the past 6 years, I've worked in affordable housing, managing low-income housing cooperatives to make sure that working class residents in our community can maintain equity and generational wealth for their families. As the treasurer of Manhattan Community Board 10 and the chair of the District Needs Task Force, I've advocated for additional funding for more affordable housing, for real investments in our public housing, for funding for our schools, and also for a non-police response to mental health illness. Our city, our community needs leaders that can hit the ground running. The most important functions of the city council is land use and also the city's budget. My personal and professional experience uniquely qualify me to be the city council member of Harlem.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Next, we have up Billy Council.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. As you know, my name is William Billy Council, product of this community. I have been born and raised here. My grandmother is still here in the same apartment building, the same apartment that she has been in for the last 90 years. I'm running for city council because I always want to be an advocate of change. I grew up in this community, like I said, you know, I have seen all the challenges that face our community, you know, from gun violence. You know, I was shot and left dead in my building here in District 9, and I've always been an advocate for change. I wanted to, be the voice for our young people. Some of our young people have not had the services that they needed in our community. Also wanted to be that catalyst for change. I think it's really important that our community have diverse individuals. I'm not from the political background. I have not been in this space my whole life, but I have been in public service my whole life. I have, been a part of mentoring in our community, running several businesses in this community, developed a nonprofit organization who partnered with a lot of the CBOs in this community to bring change, and especially for our young people. It's really important for me to be that person with the experience to help and guide and to revitalize our community. I think we had some great leaders, but I think it's now time for a change, and I think it's time for new leadership, bold ideas, and forward thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. Next, we have up Miss Athena Moore.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks again to Indivisible Harlem and certainly Dr. Harris and the Fred Samuels Democratic Club. So I'm Athena Moore. I'm a proud mom. I am pleased to be running for New York City Council District 9. I've been a long-standing community advocate, over 30 years in public service. I've been the director for the Northern Manhattan office of the Honorable Gail Brewer, Manhattan Borough President, over these past 7 years, with a storefront right in Harlem on 125th Street, overseeing over 10,000 constituents that I've served, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. I am the daughter of a sharecropper, a granddaughter of a sharecropper from the South who raised me, my grandmother, but also the daughter of a mom who was mentally ill, and that has been a major influence on my life as her caregiver. I continued with my siblings to aspire for higher education. I'm a first generation college graduate and the first in my immediate family to get a master's degree. So education has always been priority and a part of my platform. But I've also had other influences like my father, who passed from substance abuse when I was 6 years old. And it has continued to make me an advocate for strong policies that not only support those who are most vulnerable and disenfranchised and in need, but also that helps to elevate the status of all of us in the community. My grandfather was a Baptist minister, and so I continued over the years not only to work in coalition with nonprofit organizations, but also with faith communities. I've worked as the Associate Executive Director of the National Association of Social Workers. I've worked as the Special Assistant to a CEO at the Protestant Federation with over 240 nonprofit agencies in this city. I've worked with the National Leadership Commission on AIDS in 11 cities, advocating around health disparities as the Director of Public Policy. But I've also been on the ground working daily. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate this. And again, the format for 2 minutes, there's so much to get to, and I really hope that folks get to tell more of their story as we go along, but really appreciate everyone being able to have a voice. So Mario, you're next. Mario Rosser.
All right, thank you all. What's up, Harlem? Thank you, Dr. Harris. Thank you, Indivisible Harlem, and thank you, Fred Samuels. I'll get straight to the point because I don't want the Sandman to cut me off. But my name is Mario Rosser, and I'm running for City Council, number one, to keep Harlemites in our homes. Number two, to make sure that our kids have things to do when we get them off the street and out of harm's way, and to secure real safety here in Harlem that actually works for what we're actually dealing with in the neighborhood on a day-to-day, real-life basis. My entire life, I've fought to beat the odds for a better future. I was raised by a single mother who overcame drug addiction shortly before I was born. My life changed when I got a letter under the door admitting me to Columbia right around the corner. And Ever since then, it's been my life mission to open doors of opportunity for others in our neighborhood. I've been able to grow a citywide mentorship program for first generation college students who are at public institutions here around the city. I've been able to help startups and small businesses grow through technology platforms such as LinkedIn. But more than anything, what I've been able to do is develop a clear sense of how to impact and provide resources to this community through our city laws, budget, agencies. This office possesses the tangible power right now to move Harlem forward, but it can only be done with a clear sense of what we want to do on day one and hands-on leadership. And that's where I come in. Again, my name is Mario Ross. I'm very grateful to be here, and I'm looking forward to a conversation. I'll be grateful if you consider ranking me as one of your choices this spring in the Democratic Party primary.
Thank you, Mario. And next we have our last candidate in this forum, Keith Taylor.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. I'd also like to thank County Leader Wright and Indivisible Harlem for having this forum, and District Leader William Brown Phillips and the Frederick E. Samuel Democratic Club. My name is Dr. Keith Taylor, and for the past 30 years, from caseworker to commissioner, I have been fighting to address the systemic problems facing the Harlem community. And I've worked by unifying families as a caseworker at Harlem Dowling Children's Services in the 80s, as a police officer fighting police corruption, as an internal affairs supervisor, and as a correction department commissioner, reforming the fight against violence behind Rikers Island's walls. As a Harlem community activist, I've worked on the local community board in leadership positions to advocate for city services for Harlem's residents, as a former first vice chair of the board, former economic, education, and public safety chairs, and vice chair of the Landmarks Transportation Committee currently. As a Block Association president, I advocated for the establishment of the Central Harlem Landmark Historic District to preserve the Harlem we know and love for future generations. And as board chair of the Harlem Independent Living Center, I advocate for the rights of Harlem's disabled community to promote optimal independent living. As former member of the board of directors for the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone, I've worked to improve local economic revitalization of small businesses through job creation, small business assistance, and cultural investments. And as a founding board member of a local charter school, I've kept its administration accountable to families and students for educational excellence, particularly in the fields of STEM. So I am running for city council because my leadership skills, my managerial skills that I've developed over the course of my career, my dedication to the community as expressed through the various entities that I've been involved with. I know that I can provide the leadership required for the multiple crises that Harlem is facing now, historically has faced, and is going to be facing in the near future. So I'm asking for your vote so that I can build a better, safer, healthier Harlem with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate all the candidates, their opening stories about who they are and why they're running. We're going to do 3 questions, and hopefully I'll talk about hope, challenges, and then the future. So in the movie Brown Sugar, there's this line, when did you first fall in love with hip hop? So my first question is, what makes you hopeful about Harlem? Like, what makes you hopeful about the community in New York City? So Ms. Cordell Clear, when did you first fall in love with Harlem, and what makes you hopeful?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of what you said. When did I first fall in love with Harlem?
What makes you hopeful about the community?
What makes me hopeful about the community? What makes me hopeful about the community is the people. The people of Harlem make me hopeful. As I said in my opening remarks, these are the people that nurtured me, that taught me, that told me off, that scolded me, and told me when I was doing something right and told me when I was doing something wrong. And I think that was the best lesson I could ever get. So the people of Harlem, my hope for this community is that we will come out of this pandemic and not go back to normal, but come back to something better, because normal wasn't working for us. We have to do better. And I look forward to the opportunity, because we have it now to deal with all the other pandemics that we've been handling even before COVID-19. The pandemic of homelessness, the pandemic of failing schools and poorly funded schools, the pandemic of crime and mental illness. All of these things can be addressed in the city council now. We have a chance to do this better. We have a chance to do it right. And it is the people of Harlem who preserved Harlem to the state that it is right now. One of the other candidates spoke about the days. I remember when my parents did pennant patrol and protected our block and protected our buildings for the hope that I would still be here and their grandchildren would still be here. We have to deliver that hope. And I believe that we can, and I believe that I will, under my leadership, we can do that. We have to make sure we protect small businesses. Our schools need librarians. Our schools need nurses. We need social workers. We need counselors. We can focus on those things now. And I'm very hopeful that those things can happen. When we talk about leveling the playing field, it starts day one. It starts at a very young age. It starts in education. It starts in our schools. And we have to do that. We have to make affordable housing more than just 2 words. They have to be a reality. Housing that people can really afford. And in that vein, I am hopeful that those things will happen. I know that the people of Harlem will continue to guide me, because they're not shy, and they will continue to give their opinions. And I look forward to them running this community and leading this community with me.
Thank you so much. Again, on hope, Josh, what makes you hopeful about Harlem and New York City?
What makes me hopeful about Harlem is, for the most part, our youth. They're so talented, they're so dynamic, and just our Harlem community as a whole is so resilient. I think over the course of this pandemic, we've learned just how vital our essential workers are in every department, whether there are doctors and nurses or whether there are delivery drivers who are keeping us fed. When this pandemic kicked off, a lot of us started participating in mutual aid groups to really look out for our neighbors, make sure that people in the community were fed, make sure that people had access to masks and things of that nature. And just seeing that our whole community and city come together again, I don't think we really saw that since 9/11. So it really just emphasized for me that, New York City, Harlem is not going anywhere. We're still the very resilient community that we've always been. And that as long as we come together as a community, we can overcome anything. Now, I'm especially hopeful for this year, right? We're seeing a wave of new leadership coming into our city council. We're going to have a new mayor, a new comptroller. So we're turning the page. We're turning the page on a chapter in our city's history, and we're ushering a new change of equity, making sure that economic resources are distributed fairly, making sure that we're guaranteeing housing as a human right, fighting for good cause eviction, making sure that we have environmental justice to ensure that no one community is suffering from oversaturated bus depots and other facilities that depress the quality of life in our community. This is an age of equity, and we really need the leadership that really understands these problems, that's felt the pain, the experiences of our neighbors, and is going to really fight for our community in City Hall to ensure that Harlem gets the resources, get its fair share of the city's $98 billion budget that it deserves. That we can guarantee that longtime residents here in Harlem have a pathway to home ownership, have real equity, have real stake in their community so they are not displaced long-term. That we take a comprehensive approach to land use in our community that's driven by community needs and not by developer needs. I'm hopeful for all these things. And I know that Harlem is going to elect new leadership that really represents all of these progressive values, and we're going to lead the way for the city.
Thank you so much for that, Josh. since we're getting used to the Zoom technology also for the candidates, when I'm unmuting, that's kind of the key. That's 15 seconds left, and then, then the buzzer will go off. But this has been fantastic, and I really appreciate all your answers and the flow. Billy, you're up next. What makes you hopeful about Harlem and New York City?
Well, one of the things that makes me hopeful is looking at, my colleagues who are running for city council for change, and that's one of the things that I think is special about this community. Growing up in this community, we grew up in a village, and now I see that village is coming back together. People want to change. People want to be able to, help revitalize our small businesses, right? People want to help each other. Safety on our street is really important, and I see all our community leaders always, surrounding themselves with each other to try to make sure that our community becomes safe, right? So I'm just hopeful for all of the things that we need to do as community leaders, and whoever wins this election, we will have to continue the work for the ones who didn't. So, I'm hopeful that we will continue to fight for this community, continue to fight for the city. As we know, Harlem is the Mecca, basically the Mecca of the world. And we are the people who make this city run. And we got to continue to look to push forward. We got to make sure that our small businesses, we got to make sure that our education system is right for our young people. We have to, bring back job training and ultimate learning. We have to also help each other. We have to be partners in our community. It's important for me for all of us to understand that in order for us to make a change in Harlem, we all have to change, right? So I'm a catalyst for that, and I want to push that going forward, that the hope is within ourselves.
Thank you so much for that answer. Athena, you're up next.
Thank you so much. I fell in love with Harlem long ago. My father lived here in Polo Grounds and at the Savoy, and all the stories that always was shared in our household about the culture that has stayed with me my entire life, the culture of Harlem. And I do believe, like my colleagues in the village, I believe strongly that we need the pillars of this community to be strengthened and renewed and fortified. And I believe that I'm the candidate that will bring the community together. I'm a bridge builder. I've always worked in coalition all of these years, and with many of the Harlem organizations that you've heard many of us talk about, from block associations to chambers of commerce to those who are just mom and pop stores. And I want to continue using my platform in order to advocate. I'm one of the candidates that have tremendous budget, land use, and policy experience, as well as direct constituent service experience. So I think that will make the difference in bringing hope and new vibrancy and leadership, especially with the voices of the next generation. I've never had a silver spoon in my mouth or a political club. I've just always been someone who just wants to serve and give back. I told you my life journey about all of the things that have impacted me to become who I am. I started in New York City public housing as a first-generation college student, someone who came from poverty and nothing. I feel like I have everything to give. I believe that all things are possible. And that has been the way that I have led my life and led this campaign. So I will continue fighting around education and equity, but also social justice and change, and making sure that we're civically engaged. I launched a platform called Civically Yours during the pandemic, just to make sure that our young people and the next generation knew what was possible and hopeful for the community. I see myself as the rainbow in the clouds. When Maya Angelou talks about the rainbow in the clouds, we are the light. We are waiting for each other. There's no one left to wait for. We have to continue organizing, fighting, working in collaboration with each other. We can't allow division in this community. We have to continue making sure that housing is in the forefront. Thank you so much. There's so much. I'm so passionate about all of these issues.
No, listen, this candidate forum feels like a love fest, so I'm really enjoying the conversation. I would say. Keith, please, can you share again, what gives you hope for the community and for New York City? What are you positive about for Harlem?
So first of all, Dr. Harris, I agree with everything that the other candidates have said. What makes Harlem so special is the fact that it is the Mecca. It provides hope for the African diaspora. Everyone throughout the world knows of Harlem, knows about its importance culturally, architecturally, and they come from all over the world to visit the storied neighborhoods that are part of our community. So I think that what makes Harlem hopeful is its people. The leadership that's been exhibited over the many decades through various types of social justice activities that our community has helped create and blossom. Everything from the civil rights movement to before that, you had the desegregation efforts for the armed services in the 40s. And before that, you had the Harlem Renaissance, and you had a consistent fight for the rights of people of color in this society. And we still suffer today from the systemic issues in housing and education and employment and health, and you name it, because we're still fighting that battle for equity and for justice. And so Harlem is really a source of a lot of hope for a lot of people all over the world. And I know it's going to continue to do so. And I would absolutely represent our community in City Council to make certain that that hope is alive.
Thank you. And this time, last but not least, Mario, again, what makes you hopeful? And talk to me about your love for Harlem.
Thank you, Doctor. And I'm gonna speak in concrete terms because this is a community that is dealing with real things today. And most of the time when I'm talking to folks, people want to hear what you gonna do right now. And but I do appreciate that we're talking about hope on this forum. It's refreshing, so I'm gonna give you guys an unplanned answer. You know, hope comes from the Old English word hopa, and it means confidence in the future. One thing you guys will learn about me is that I'm a very evidence-based person. That's what underpins everything that I advocate for. And when I look at the evidence of what's happening in this community, I see a community that has been extraordinarily resilient under strained resources. I see a community where the young people are the most entrepreneurial people that you could ever hope for. I see a community where we have a mix of the Black diaspora that other communities are envious of. So when you look at the actual evidence of what's in the community, it gives me confidence. Now, in terms of the future, again, I'm very evidence-based. Right now, we have to think about what is actually possible to get done through City Council. What can we get done within the next 2 years? And so much of that is around political consensus. And right now, we are at a time where not only in Harlem, but in neighborhoods that are dealing with issues that are similar to the issues that we're dealing with in Harlem, recognize that we need to make sure that we recover from this pandemic and we recover from this economic crash in a way that makes sure the working class people and the people who have been disincluded from the great economic wealth of this city are finally dealt their fair share. And particularly, I focus in my career on making sure that young people have access to internships and mentorship programs, and making sure we grow our small businesses through technology. And so when we think about where we are right now in the city, that is what gives me hope that we can translate this political consensus into concrete results for the community. I'm also a bridge builder, and I'm also a very common sense, evidence-oriented person. So that's the real answer, if you guys ever could have got one.
Thank you so much. And it is a fantastic pivot as we go again to the top. The next question is about challenges. And Mario, you teed this up very well. This is an opportunity for each candidate to pick a specific challenge that they're prioritizing and how you would solve it. So you can go deep and go granular on an issue to let the forum know how you would address it and use your perch in City Council to do so. So Cordell, if you can talk about a challenge and in Harlem that you see or in the city, and how would you like to go about addressing it?
Okay, I'll try to keep it to one. Well, one of the greatest challenges, hands down, as I walk in this community and as I serve and people call me for assistance and help, has got to be housing. Housing, the condition of housing, the availability of housing. You know, everybody has turned into the Huxtables. The children can't leave home. They can't afford to move out. And I think that we have to come up with a plan. The mayor's mandatory inclusionary housing program, it has to really be inclusionary. I would work with my colleagues in the city council to come up with a neighborhood median income. We can't keep building to the median income that we're using right now because it's not affordable to low income and working class families in the community. And if we're serious about being inclusionary and getting all of our city residents into housing, we are going to have to change something. And I'm willing to work with my city council colleagues to make sure that we do that. That is a priority for me. In addition, as we look to where we can get new affordable housing, we have to make sure that we're maintaining and preserving the affordable housing that we already have. We have to take care of public housing. We have to stop the bleed of regulated housing that's coming out of, that's becoming deregulated at alarming rates, because as we build, we're losing and we're displacing. And those are two things that I really am very passionate about, very serious about, but I have to also mention education as well. And I think I said some things earlier. We are gonna have to focus on education. We have to focus on leveling that playing field. COVID-19 showed us the big disparity between our students, some of the big disparities between our students. Every student should have broadband. There's no reason every student can have broadband, can have remote devices so that they can be able to compete here in society. So those are two very, very serious issues that I want to address. And, you know, all of these are inclusive of, you know, the overarching problem of disparity, racism. You know, we have to overcome that. And I'm somebody, in my leadership, I'm going to focus on that. We have to overcome racism and disproportionate treatment in our community. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for that answer. Josh, a challenge and how you go about solving it with the position in City Council.
Thank you for the question, Dr. Harris. I'm going to touch on a couple. One, affordable housing. Our city's affordable housing agenda does not work for working class communities or Black and Brown communities. We need to dismantle city programs such as third-party transfer that disproportionately displace Black homeowners, small homeowners in our communities. We need to dismantle programs such as mandatory inclusionary housing that provide very little affordable housing in exchange for luxury market rate housing, and also rezonings that displace our small businesses. We have to really look at housing and land use from a community-driven perspective and have comprehensive rezonings that really meet the needs of our community. In addition, we have to create more project-based Section 8 housing, permanent income-based housing, community land trust, and more cooperative housing opportunities to ensure that people in our community have real stake, have real equity, have home ownership. In addition to all that, we have to really focus on the economic piece. We have to protect our small businesses. We have to pass the Small Business Justice and Jobs and Survival Act in the City Council to make sure that our small businesses are not being displaced in favor of big box retail. We have to pass our legislation to provide a public banking system so that we can increase microloans to entrepreneurs, startups, and really service our small businesses who aren't qualifying for PPP, who aren't able to get the New York Forward loans, who have not been able to get traditional private lending because we still deal with redlining and things of that nature. We have to really expand access to capital for our businesses so that we can see more Black businesses in our city. Only 2% of Black businesses, of small businesses in our city are Black owned, and those are pre-pandemic numbers. I can only imagine what those numbers look like right now. So we have to really make sure that we're looking at things from a comprehensive, holistic approach, and really equity has to be the driving force behind all these issues. In addition to that, we have to really look at healthcare. We have to expand the New York City CARES Act to ensure that more people have access to healthcare. COVID disproportionately impact communities such as ours because our people don't have access to preventative health care. We also have to make sure that workers in the gig economy who are really our essential workers have access to health care. So we really have to, as a city, elect leadership that's really going to fight for these issues, that's really going to push the needle, push the envelope, and deliver real change and progress for our community.
Thank you, Josh. Next, Billy, on a challenge and concretely how you try to address it.
Well, for anybody who knows me, that I speak candid for our youth. You know, as a former high school athletic director, I have put more young people from our community in college, helped them get in college, and you know, it's really important that we focus on our youth and we focus on education. As we know, all of that becomes a circle, right? So when you have young people who are not employed, who do not have skills, do not have job training, who don't have vocational training, you know what that does? That puts them back on the street to the school to prison pipeline. And then what that does that do? That they disrupt our community. They rob, they steal, because they don't have the opportunity. So one of the things that I want to do is provide opportunity for our young people. That's why I started a mentoring program. So our young people can have mentors and guidance, right? They're actually crying out for the help, and we gotta sit there and listen to them. We gotta sit there and help them. So, I really believe that we have to focus on our youth and we have to focus on education. Then of course, small businesses, right? I run a small business, have a small business, I develop a small business. So I think it's important that, we get programming and resources for them so we can keep our dollar in our community. Our dollar circulates in our community every 6 hours, right? So that's one of the reasons why it's really important that, we teach our kids about economic development. We have a big literacy problem in our community. We have to combat our literacy problem, right? All of this stuff becomes a cycle when our kids don't have the right opportunities and the right funding. So I'm an advocate for that. And I'm going to fight as hard as I can to make sure that every person in our community has the opportunity and the resources that they need for them to take care of them families and they take care of their businesses.
Thank you so much for that, Billy. Athena, challenges and concrete solutions.
Thank you so much. So of course, we're still in a pandemic. It's been perilous and we're living in unprecedented times. This global pandemic has definitely impacted us significantly. We've had sustained racial, gender, and economic injustices, which have affected all of us across the spectrum, no matter your income level, race, class, or gender. So my plan will continue to focus on economic recovery, making sure that equitable distribution of federal funds is in place. So when we talk about the American Rescue Plan and the proposed jobs plan, we have to make sure that that is implemented on the ground and that we have our MWBEs, but also our young people benefit from that. So that includes training. It means good jobs with a living wage. It means small businesses getting support. It means green and tech jobs and vocational training and making sure apprenticeships and financial literacy in place. It also means having an economic and education plan that is in tandem with each other so that we have school curriculum that reflects that. So we should be teaching young people at the early ages what it means to go into business and entrepreneurship and all of that. But we also need to make sure that college access and summer youth programs and childcare resources are in place, because you can't have an economic plan without the foundation for our families to have stability. And also that healthcare is not going anywhere. And that's a major pillar underneath my economic recovery plan. Right now, we have so many vaccinations that are still in need. Although we've accomplished a great deal in Harlem alone with 161,000 people being vaccinated, when you compare us to other communities, there is still inequity. And we must make sure that we have adequate testing, vaccinations. We must have community-based mental health. We have to make sure that our substance abuse treatment plans are in place. We need prevention. We know that violence in our community is a public safety issue, but it's also a public health issue. So I will continue to advocate for healthy and affordable food options and so much more for our caregivers and our essential workers. That's a major focal point for me at this time, our economic recovery.
Thank you, Athena. Mario, next, a challenge and concrete solutions.
Thank you, Doc. I'm going to be really specific about what I can deliver over the next 2 years. I was talking to a mother about 2 weeks ago who said that her son was walking down 125th Street and he got stabbed 4 times. He got stabbed in the head, he got stabbed in the shoulder, he got stabbed in the hips. He lived, but she sat there and she cried right there in front of me in real life. I believe that genius is equally distributed and opportunity, but opportunity isn't. I myself was the only one from my block to even be able to make it to college. And there are some brilliant people who came from my block. Right now, the city council office can provide tangible support to make sure we secure Harlem for a future generation and make sure we're providing a future where the expected outcome for every single young person in Harlem is life affirming. For many people on the call today, your kids might be okay, maybe not. But for far too many young people in our community, the average is not that you're going to go to college or you're going to get a trade or that you're going to be okay. And in 2030, I want to say that we made the investments in 2021 coming off the heels of global unrest to secure Harlem for a future generation of young people. I call it the Harlem Youth Commitment. And specifically, number one, we're going to work to expand early childhood education beyond its accessibility level today. We're going to work to make childcare more affordable for parents in the city beyond the programs that currently exist. And we're going to make sure we get our neighborhood schools and PTA presidents like Ms. Davis the resource she needs so that their kids can go to school in Harlem, have the confidence they're going to develop the culture and character right here in the neighborhood. They shouldn't have to go to the Upper West Side to go to school. Number two, we're going to make sure we get these kids who are between the ages of 13 and 18 something to do. I know from my own personal experience, it's at that age where you were too grown, you're old enough not to have to be watched by your parents, but you're not grown. You make decisions that last you for your entire life. We got to get programs like the PAL and Boys and Girls Club revitalized and fully equipped as we reopen. And then finally, we have to expand the reach of mentorship programs, skilled trade apprenticeships, digital skills programs, and also, and maybe most importantly, entrepreneurial grants for our entrepreneurial people in Harlem who have so many ideas and have the track record, but just don't always have the capital. That's what we can get done. It's called the Harlem Youth Commitment. And if you vote for me, it's going to be an extreme focus, and we're going to see resources being allocated to our ecosystem of programs to help people from cradle to age 25.
Thank you, Mario. Keith, talk to me about a challenge or two and concrete solutions.
Sure. One of the things that I like to focus on is solutions that are innovative, evidence-based, and are accountable. We have a severe need for economic development, for jobs in our community. We also have a need of having a clean environment. And because of systemic discrimination, environmental racism, we have suffered as a community because of that. We are suffering it it's expressed in our medical conditions, in our inability to deal with COVID crisis like other communities are. So one of the things that I would like to do specifically is focus on green jobs, green energy. Over 70% of New York City greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings, heating, sometimes cooling systems, hot water systems, cooking, building, envelope efficiency, lighting. These are all things that have to be upgraded building by building in order to green Harlem. And it should be Harlem individuals who are employed doing this work. And that doesn't even address the opportunity to install rooftop solar with battery backup systems to help New York City in general with its electric grid and resiliency for the buildings that get this energy upgrade. So we have programs. There are there is funding for these initiatives to take place, but the problem is getting the right people in our communities to connect for planning and implementation. So we have to focus on specific projects. They have to be identified, sponsored, and funded in order for the construction to begin, and the local workforce has to be developed. So I will focus on job creation through the green economy specifically.
Thank you so much for that. So we're on to the last general question. Since everyone has done a really fantastic job within the bounds of this debate, you're going to be able to luxuriate with a 3-minute last answer. So extra 60 seconds for your last answer. So we're going to talk about, the question is, talk to me about what will the future look like as you, as the candidate. What is the future in the district as you as a candidate? So this is your a chance to make the case of why to make you're the vote and to work for everyone's vote, and talk to us about how the future will look with you in the office representing Harlem in the city council, starting with Ms. Clear.
The future of leadership, my leadership in this district, is one of inclusiveness. What I've learned, that the best way to lead and the best way to plan is with the stakeholders at your side. And I would definitely call upon the stakeholders in this community to lead with me. And I often tell people while I'm campaigning, when I win, we win, because this is a partnership. This is not something anyone can do alone. And I have learned this through working in coalitions and getting things done, getting results, getting things done. And I see us together leading Harlem out of not only the COVID-19 pandemic, but out of the other pandemics that were mentioned by many of us tonight. The pandemic of unaffordable rents, the pandemic of crime and violence in our streets, the pandemic of our children not having trades, not having jobs, not having rec centers, not having services and resources. I see a Harlem where everyone can afford to be here, not just some, but everyone can afford to be in Harlem. And I also see a Harlem where our young people and not so young people can start businesses and grow businesses and be supported in this community. We can fund those. We can look at the idea of commercial rents, rent control, and make sure that businesses are not priced out of the community, just like residents have been priced out of the community. I look at a Harlem where our cultural institutions and the wonderful places that we grew up seeing can remain in Harlem, and that culture can always remain a focal point in Harlem. It is one of the major attractions that brings people here. It differentiates us from many other places. I think one of the other candidates said tonight, Harlem is world known. We are the most famous neighborhood in the world, not city, a neighborhood. We are famous, and we're famous because large in part due to the culture that Harlem brings, and also due to the leadership that we provided in the Black community. We are the Black Mecca of the world, and so Harlem goes, so goes everyone else, as another great leader once said. So I see a Harlem that recovers from this pandemic. I see us being able to fund our health, our neighborhood health clinics, more neighborhood health clinics, so that we can deal with some of the health disparities that are in our communities. All of the things I said about our schools, we need to support them so that every school is a quality school, and we're not fighting to get into 2 or 3 or 4 institutions that everybody can't go to. Every school should be a quality school, and we should not be trying to go somewhere to get our children a good education. And I see a Harlem where people can afford rents and they can afford to own homes in their own community, and we just grow and thrive.
Thank you so much for that and for sharing. Mr. Clennon, you're up, your 3 minutes. What's the future of Harlem look like because of your leadership, and what will you do as the council member representing us?
On June 22nd, when you rank me as your #1 pick for city council, you will be opting in to a Harlem for the many, not for the few. a vibrant community that continues to be a cultural mecca for arts, music, entertainment, for entrepreneurs, for small businesses, for tech, a melting pot of diversity, because diversity is what always has made Harlem the great, strong community that it is. We are going to guarantee housing as a human right by providing real homeownership opportunities to longtime residents. We're going to protect our renters with good cause eviction. We're going to bring real investments to NYCHA, to public housing, to ensure that our people in public housing are not living in environments that are comparable to a third world country, where they have doors that open and close, where they have security, where they have cleanly sanitary buildings, and don't have to wait 6 months to a year for a work order to be addressed, where we have a community that has efficient sanitation services, where we replace these metal waste bins with smart waste baskets to ensure that our sanitation system is fully optimized, where we expand accessibility to our transportation to ensure that our seniors, our disabled communities have access to every subway station here in our community. We're going to reopen the senior centers and enhance them to ensure that our senior residents have all the services and they need to live a thriving and productive life in their golden years. We're going to ensure that we create more supportive housing to really get our folks off the street and expand the summer youth employment program to a year-round program to create year-round opportunities for career development and job placement for our youth, giving them real opportunity to really maximize their potential and keep them away from the corners, from the streets. We're going to address the oversaturation of addiction treatment facilities here in Harlem that have plagued our community for the past 5 years and more. All of these things are possible when we elect new leadership that truly understands our city's budget process, that truly understands affordable housing, that truly understands land use and how it works, and also has the vision and energy to get the job done, and has the relationships with candidates running for city council across our entire city, that has relationships with our state elected officials to really push the envelope to make sure that we get meaningful change in our everyday lives.
Thank you, Joshua. Next, we have Mr. Council.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Doc.
I was just going to go. Want to talk about the future. What will the future look like in Harlem because of your time as the council member representing the district? So tell us how the future is going to look like because of your leadership.
I think our future in Harlem is going to look bright. I think our future is going to be bright. With a person like me who have no political background, who has no allegiance to any particular party when it comes down to the democratic process, you know, I'm going to unify our community around equity and access. You know, we have to make sure that everyone in this community voice is heard. Everyone gets a chance to have the proper guidance and the proper opportunities and the proper resources, not just a few, but everyone. Every 160 certain thousand people in District 9 has the same opportunity. We're going to work on affordable housing so people won't be displaced out of their homes, right? Where there's so much history and love in our community. You know, we're going to work on bringing and revitalizing our businesses in our community. As you remember, in the late 60s, nothing in Harlem was off limits. Everything belonged to our community. You know, we're going to continue to work hard with our young people to give them the resources and the education that they need. We're going to work with our elderly to make sure that they feel safe and they protected. We're going to work with make sure that our women are safeguarded. We're going to make sure that our streets are clean, right? So for me, not being having a political background, I'm working with everyone and everybody to make sure that they feel safe and they feel needed in a community. It's really important that we all come together to continue to unify each other, right? We got to continue with a diversity of thought, right? So our whole community can win and not just a few.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Council. Next, Ms. Moore, talk to us about the future and what do you think it would look like because of your leadership in the council?
Thank you. I said the future will be bright. This campaign, I've been talking about Harlem deserving more and that all things are possible. So I see the future as being hopeful. I see the future as being filled with light, radiating from each and every one of us who are committed to change in this community. I see the future as being resilient, that Harlem will be transformed, that we will be strong, and that our ancestors will be proud. I see that Harlem will have more in terms of resources, that the budgets that we pass in the city council when I am a city council member will be more than we've ever passed before, and that it will reflect the needs of this district. I told you in the beginning of this conversation that I'm a daughter of NYCHA, that I come from the most vulnerable communities, and that the needs in my own community impacted me tremendously, from mental health to substance abuse to coming from a legacy of sharecroppers. So I see Harlem being one that Zora Neale Hurston would be proud, that as we educate our children, that Langston Hughes will be proud. I see that the political landscape will change, that the next generation will rise up. Harlem is still rising, and Adam Clayton Powell and Percy Sutton will be proud of us all. I see that we will continue this economic recovery. We will have safety outcomes, and Harlem will be more prosperous. We will have more homeowners. We will have more people with jobs and careers that elevate their status in life, so that we are not just depleted and oppressed. I see that Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman would be proud of us, that we will not only educate our youth, but that the housing that we live in will be owned by us, that the businesses will be owned by us, that we will have tenant protections, and we will have access to all kinds of practices that help to get rid of the homeless, that we will have more responsible development, that we will have sustainable environments that are clean in this community, that we will continue to make proud Dr. Barbara Ann Teer, that Harlem's arts and culture community will be vibrant, that we will continue to make sure that it is historically preserved for generations and generations to come, that we will continue to fight gang violence and gun violence, that we will have reforms of our police system, that we will make sure that that system reflects us, that more of us will be employed in those systems. The future will be bright. The future will have more for Harlem, and it will definitely have a leader who will advocate for us strongly, who will fight for us at every turn, and make sure that land use, budget, and policy decisions are always grounded in our ancestors and those who came before us.
Thank you so much for that answer, Miss Athena Moore. Going next to Mario Rosser. Talk to us about the future with you as the member representing us, and what will be different because of your leadership.
Thank you, Doc. And y'all gave me 3, but I'm gonna take 1.5. So everybody hear what I'm saying. There are 3 things that I see when we look back in 2030 because of what we did right now. Number 1, in 2030, this still is going to be a neighborhood where you can go and working class Black people still live in Harlem. That's what I see in 2030. Number 2, I see a neighborhood where the expected future for every single kid born into this neighborhood, no matter what type of family they were born into, is bright, where that kid has a life-affirming outcome, where they can go to school in the neighborhood and develop the culture, confidence, and character that we all expecting that kids in wealthy neighborhoods get. That's what I see. And number 3, I see a future where, frankly, policing does not have to be the center of the conversation around public safety, because we've invested in our young people, because we've made the budget prioritize compassionate and aggressive outreach to people who are living on our streets and who are dealing with drug use. And we're getting them into supportive housing and the mental health services they need. And so that everything is about safety doesn't have to be about police. That's not where we are today. But if you elect me, I can tell you I'm a very concrete, evidence-driven person who listens a whole lot. And what I advocate for is based upon the feedback that I get from people who are actually living with situations. We're gonna make sure Harlem is respectful for everyone, and that you can walk outside and not be concerned you're gonna get hit upside the head. That's the Harlem that I see. And that's what I support and what I represent. So thank you all for the question. I'm looking forward to some of the audience questions as well. I know there's some good ones.
Yes, thank you, Mario Rosser. And last, we have Keith Taylor talking to us about the future based off of your leadership.
The future, based on my leadership, is going to be one that is grounded in leadership in city council that will be guided and grounded in my experiences, in my preparation, and in my promise to make certain that the systemic problems that Harlem has faced that have been worsened by the pandemic and the economic calamities as a result will be disrupted and will be destroyed. The systemic poverty, the discrimination and the disempowerment of our community to successfully address those enduring problems. That is what I am going to address. That is the skill set that I've been fortunate enough to get through education as a criminal justice professor, through my experience in public safety in a variety of roles, from cop to commissioner, and through my advocacy in the various volunteer efforts that I have led. So my leadership is going to be an important factor in how and why Harlem is able to get beyond the systemic problems that we have suffered over generations. I'm very fortunate to have a Harlem family legacy going back over 100 years of fighting for equal rights, economic development, and political empowerment. And it's one of the reasons why my love for Harlem runs deep and true. And that is what I am offering with my leadership to make Harlem a much better environment for all of our residents to live in.
Thank you for that. I am truly in community right now, and the music of the Harlem is coming up from the streets and wafting through the Zoom.